Pardon the clutter, but I'm actually doing repairs from Mom's house right now while I take care of the house for her. Today we're going to repair a Sony DA-555ES receiver, and it's not just any DA-555ES. This one belonged to my mom. Okay, so this one was just doing weird stuff, just intermittent audio dropouts, intermittent pops and clicks, and just sometimes it just wouldn't even come out of protection. But the intermittent nature of this suggests that the output transistors are just fine, and indeed they are, which is a good thing because they're Sanken SAP15s, and those are a bit hard to get your hands on these days. Those are Darlington transistors with integrated bias compensation diodes, hence the 5 leads. The problem with this is pretty typical for just about any receiver, and as you can imagine, it's just a case of bad solder joints and a few bad caps. Okay, more than a few bad caps. We'll get to that later, though. You'll have problems on 3 boards: the main board, the main power board, and the rear amplifier board. But let's first talk about the power supply board. So this has the main rectifiers, the standby transformer, and the main filter caps. On this, you'll find several problems. The first big problem you're going to find is this jumper next to this relay is going to burn its traces. Replace the jumper and do trace repairs as necessary. You'll probably have to direct wire, however, because you may find that one of the traces is just unsalvageable. I'll show that here in a sec. You'll have 2 bad caps. This one may be bulged, and this one will read low. This one will probably be okay. Just replace those with any 105 degrees Celsius low ESR cap and you'll be fine. They're not very critical. They're not in any audio signal path, that is what I mean. They are critical to the operation of the unit. You'll have some stress solder joints at that power transistor and in the vicinity. Just touch those up, you'll be fine. And that'll about cover it for the power board. Your big filter caps will probably be just fine. They're very high quality and they're kept cool via the cooling fan that's inside this unit. Everything else is going to be pretty just straightforward on the power board. You can see right there that kind of nasty looking trace repair I had to do there, and I had to actually loop the wire around the relay pin there. Unfortunately, that trace is just completely unsalvageable, and it actually peeled right off when I hit it with the soldering iron. Not your most involved repair by any means, though. I mean, this is a pretty simple repair. Okay, on the rear amp board mirrors the problems you're going to find on the main amp board. You have a driver IC here that is a voltage amplifier for the power amp. The electrolytic capacitors in the vicinity of this get hot, and most of them will be bad. And this will be the case in all 5 channels. You will have bad capacitors near this IC. If it's within about 20 millimeters of this IC and it's an electrolytic cap, change it. It's probably going to be bad. You'll find a few that are good, but most of them will be bad. Just change them all. In addition, because this IC runs hot, you will find that all the solder joints on this IC and a few in the vicinity are bad. I will flip the device over and I'll show you. You'll just need to make a bunch of touch-ups underneath there and get everything nice and clean and replace those caps. Capacitor complement is as follows. You've got 2 10 volt 220 microfarad, 2 4.7 microfarad 50 volt, and I believe 2 16 volt 47 microfarad caps. Use 105 degrees Celsius caps. If you want audio grade, I recommend Nishikon KA. Or you can just, if you don't have KA in stock, you can just certainly use Panasonic FC. In fact, I didn't have KA for everything, so I just used FC on those. You're not going to hear the difference. And it'll last longer than stock. Here, same thing. We got driver ICs retouched and new caps. There's one less 47 microfarad on this channel because this IC is only handling 1 channel. The other things you're going to need to touch up are the linear regulators, and you will probably find that the capacitor down in there, which is a 16 volt 470 microfarad, you'll probably find that that one's also bad. If that's got label stretching on it, you see how the label kind of overlaps the top of the cap there? Let's see if I can get this thing to focus. It does not want to focus at all. Oh, there we go. If you don't see that, that cap is almost certainly damaged and needs to be replaced. Use 105 degrees Celsius caps here as well. Obviously, Panasonic FC works quite nicely. If that cap is bad, however, you're going to need to take out this entire main board, and that's a bit of a chore. The best way to do it is just to disconnect only the cables that are becoming stretched when you try to pull off this front panel. You'll need to unbolt it from the chassis and unbolt the bottommost RCA jacks as well. It's not too hard, but you'll want to remove that ribbon cable and a few other cables at the back. It's not as bad. You don't have to unwire the entire device. Just be careful and go slowly. Also, leave the heatsink bolted to the PCB, or you could literally rip the transistors off of the PCB, and that'll probably ruin your day real quick. And will probably ruin the receiver as well. So, just be careful and go slowly. Most of the repairs on this can be accessed via the service hatch underneath. Let me show you that. Okay, so there's a door underneath this thing. And as you can see, our driver ICs and the capacitors in the vicinity are easily accessed under this door. And most of our linear regulators can be accessed here as well. And even the ones at the back you can get at if you put your iron underneath there. As you can see, they're there. And I've retouched quite a few joints here. All of them were in pretty rough shape. But that capacitor is actually like right in there, and you won't be able to get to it without removing the main board. And that kind of stinks. There is a cooling fan inside this unit, and it is well hidden. It is underneath here, and this is actually a cooling duct that ducts air to this heatsink. It's a pretty nifty system. The cooling fan is high quality, and I don't anticipate you needing to replace it. And I've never even heard it run, so I don't know whether it's thermostatically controlled or if it's controlled via power levels like the Technics receivers are. But this is a really good receiver. Really good. And you're probably wondering, well, why am I repairing this if it's an 18-year-old home theater receiver? Well, one, for sentimental reasons, it was my mom's. But two, my mom's home theater system was not very complicated. In fact, it was just stereo. It wasn't even surround sound. She has a couple of big old HPM 60 speakers attached to this thing. The fact is, she only had 2 HDMI sources. This thing, of course, does not do HDMI switching. It's from the year 2000. It's too old. But her 4K TV does all the HDMI switching, and it processes video fast enough that I don't need the receiver to do audio delay for lip sync. So, optical out from the TV into this, it works just fine. So if you're content with stereo or just basic 5.1 sound, and you demand almost pretty much the ultimate in receiver performance on the analog side of things, you might look into getting one of these. And if you have one and it's malfunctioning like as described, send it in. It's about $100 to repair it if you don't want to tackle this repair yourself. And if it's your first repair, I don't recommend you do. These are fairly difficult to work on, especially if you have to remove that main board. But in our case, even with the 4K TV, because she's only got those 2 sources and there's no real heavy video processing that needs to be done that the TV can't handle, we don't need a newer receiver than this. And the analog performance of this is excellent. I forgot the actual wattage per channel. I believe it's 110 watts. But I remember the distortion very clearly. 0.05% THD plus noise from anywhere from 250 milliwatts all the way to rated power. It is an extremely low noise, excellent circuit. And it even has a phono preamp that's quite decent. So you can use this for just about everything. You can hook it up to your TV and your turntable. This is a great receiver. And the power supply, as you saw, was absolutely monstrous, so there's plenty of dynamic reserve as well. So this is a really, really good unit that is still worth repairing, even though it's 18 years old. Anyway, I'm going to put this guy back together. One word beforehand, if you try to tackle this repair yourself, try to preserve these mica insulators. These SAP15s, while they are TO3P packages, they're longer than most TO3Ps, and so are the insulators. If you break one of those insulators, you're going to have to cut yourself another one. You're not going to be able to just buy one from Mauser or DigiKey. So, to avoid having to cut fresh mica or cut sill pads, you want to preserve those insulators if at all possible. Just go slowly and gently remove the transistors and you'll be fine. The thermal compound hasn't yet dried up on these units yet. They're a little too new for the thermal compound to completely turn to cake. The thermal compound on this one is actually still very, very pliable and basically like new. The only reason I'm having to replace it is that I've disturbed the thermal interface. So that's about all you need to know about these receivers to fix them. They're generally very reliable and very well built. And like I said, in other videos, the problems that this unit has are not unique to Sony. I mean, you see them on Technics units all the time, and Pioneers and Yamahas. All of these surround sound receivers have this problem. It's just due to the component density. You have small components that run hot, and that puts a lot of stress on those solder joints. So this type of repair is going to happen a lot and is not necessarily indicative of the quality of the unit. This is an extremely high quality receiver. Of course, we'd expect nothing less from Sony ES. Anyway, I'm going to go get this thing fixed, put it back on Mom's TV, and I'm going to enjoy it. Thanks for watching.